Long time no see, everyone. Sorry I've been quiet for a wee bit there. Quick life update. I just had my birthday and I'm just back at work. The first time working this year for, because of chemo. My hair is coming back like properly. Texture's a little bit different, but that was expected. But at least it's coming back. Whew, was kind of worried about that. And, getting back normal again. We went to see Indiana Jones this week. I was actually pleasantly surprised by Harrison Ford when he wants to, do stuff is good when he's trying. Plus, you got to see grumpy old man Harrison Ford, which is, something I've come to enjoy. Plus, at the end of the day, I'm just always glad to see like a Nazi get punched. I don't think I'm ever allowed to get sick of that, and I don't think we should ever get sick of watching Nazis get punched. Film is far from perfect. Other people will talk about that, but there's just one teensy little thing I want to talk about, and that is the strangeness of the choice of villain for this film. So, on that note, grab a tea, coffee, or alcoholic beverage, whatever you want, and let's sit down and talk about this. So the villain this time was played by Mads Mikkelsen. Great choice. He's just very intimidating. But, when you see him play like nice guys, he's really good now as well. But when you see him play villains, peak. And again, apparently absolutely lovely in real life, but also just a fantastic actor. So good for this role because he could bring a lot of complexity to it. And I feel like that's one of the weaknesses of this film. It didn't push into that. I feel like they could have done more with it, especially because of who he's playing. So he's playing Dr. Jürgen Voller. That name is fictional. It's not a real person. He is based on a real person. Werner von Brunn, or I think that's how you pronounce his name. Yeah. And he is an interesting fellow. Very interesting. I'm going to talk a bit about him, and then we'll get on to why it's weird that he was picked as the villain for an Indiana Jones film. But he is definitely a man that has left his mark on history. That much I don't think any of us can deny. Werner was born in 1912 in the German Empire. Many passive moviegoers may remember a quick reference to him in Iron Man 3.
Fun fact. Before he built rockets for the Nazis, the idealistic Werner von Braun dreamed of space travel.
And I feel like this is a very poignant reference, especially for the character and for how he's depicted in history. He came from a very wealthy aristocratic family, and he had a great love for space travel and the rockets and all things like that. His mother was apparently the one that really encouraged him with this, buying him a telescope at a young age, and even books on space travel. His brother would also, one of his brothers would follow in his footsteps and help design rockets. He would eventually go to one of Berlin's top academies to study, and at this point, by the time of his graduation, he'd be noticed by the current ruling government, the Nazi Party, and that's where we run into problems, because he would graduate with his doctorate in 1934 and begin work for the military. German military, Nazi government. It's not a good look. And he also designed the infamous V2 rocket, and its time like a technical marvel. The V was also stood for the German word for vengeance, and they would have caused, I think, like 9,000 deaths is estimated upon being fired at London, I believe, or just the UK. So you could argue in his defense here that it was a patriotic reason why he built these rockets, because there are many people that fought on the wrong sides of wars because they believe in what in their country, not what their country's doing, but their country. But there are two sort of things that act against him. Firstly, who built his rockets? He may have designed them, but Germany had a shortage of manpower during World War II, and they used slaves. In later life, I believe on the Dick Cavett show, he would deny knowing anything about this. Or is that when he denied the SS? Anyway, he would deny knowing anything about this. Though in earlier trials, we have it in writing that he admitted to visiting the slave camps where the rockets were built 12 to 15 times. Now, I don't judge him for visiting the camps. That's part of what he's supposed to do. He was supposed to supervise rockets being built, but the camps were a special kind of hell on earth. They were underground. Toilets were barrels with pieces of wood over them, and there weren't enough of them, so people would just go where they pleased. Men were forced to just sleep on the ground. They were inadequately fed. I know there were much worse things during the Holocaust, obviously, but this was part of it, you know. And he, at the end of these camps, he was a high authority. He could have made things a little bit better. Now, I don't know what his position was back then politically, because we will never know the truth of it. We'll get to that in a minute. Because we also know he was in the SS. Now, not the more famous Waffen-SS or the SS that ran the concentration camps. It was a different branch of it. I'm not a complete expert in these things. And I know from other historical books and all I've read and shows I've seen and things I've been taught that yes, people would get ahead in Nazi Germany by joining the SS. They would have to get certain jobs. It was like one of those cases, if it's not what you know, it's who you know. And in interviews he admitted that, well, he claimed that he was enticed into the SS by Himmler himself. And yeah, to this day, there are no actual photographs of him in SS uniform. There is a photograph of him supposedly with the SS pin. So we don't really know, was he dedicated to the cause? But what we do know for certain is this is a man that wanted to get to space. And he would do anything to get to space. So he would sign a deal with the devil himself, I feel like, to get there. And the proof of that is what happened near the end of the war. So in 44, he was at a party, or at least this is one of the versions of the stories I've heard, complaining that, one, he shouldn't be building rockets to shoot at London or the Allies. He should be building rockets going to space. And two, that they are going to lose the war. In 44, it was pretty clear that Germany wasn't going to win. Still, there were a few people who disagreed. The SS, for instance, who arrested him and put him in jail or prison. Now, he would eventually get out because Werner was one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. The Nazis needed him to build more of their weapons, so they got out. But come 45, with the Soviets less than 200 kilometers from where they were, he saw the writing on the wall. Like, he was right. They needed to get the hell out of there. And there were, at this point, 3 major powers on their way to Germany. He looked at the Soviets and didn't like what he saw there. He felt like he'd be tortured and punished. And there's proof of that. I know an associate of his would eventually go to the Soviet Union. I think unfortunately for him, I don't think he planned on it. I think he planned other options. Where he was, well, I've been taught that he was worked quite hard. Don't know how much that's true again, because history's taught by the winners, as they say. But Werner, what he did is he created a convoy of like 125 people, multiple different forms of transportation, and he thought to himself, Soviets no. English, he looked at them, or United Kingdom, saw him as a failing power and that they couldn't protect him, so he realized the Americans could protect him. Now bear in mind at this point as well, the Americans and the Soviets knew about the V2 rockets. They wanted more of their own versions of it, so there was a race to get these people. And for the Americans, it was Operation Paperclip, which was a big plan to get as many Nazi scientists, the best, and bring them to the Americans. You can't have other powers getting those things, can you? So again, I'm not calling the Americans the devil.
Girls are the devil
here, but what I'm willing to say is that He wanted to build rockets, and he knew the best place to build them was with the United States. So he would go there, and he would work with their military. He would be under special watch. They let him go back to Germany to marry his cousin and bring his mother and father and wife, who was his cousin, over with him. But he still built their rockets. But his story doesn't stop there, because he wanted to go to space. Now, he himself would never get to go, but he would become one of the heads. I think actually the head of NASA. Like, when it started, he was there. And, you know, the Saturn V rocket, that was him. You know, the West went to space because of him and his work. So this is the one thing he wanted to do his entire life, and he worked with the Nazis to do it, and then he fled the Nazis to work with the Americans. So again, one could argue that he himself necessarily wasn't a Nazi and didn't believe in the ideology, but he was still willing to work with them to get to where he wanted, which is a really complex issue in general, because I just really don't fucking like Nazis. I don't think anyone should. They're a blight that still exists, unfortunately. It's spread far too often. But we're getting sidetracked. So, okay, he worked with Nazis and he worked with the Americans. And what's the problem with that? Mads Mikkelsen's character did the exact same thing in the film. Again, why is this an issue for Disney? That's the interesting thing that comes next. I'm going to top this up, and then we're going to come back and talk about that. You know, I had the perfect take done there, and then a car alarm just went off, like literally in my last sentence. It threw me off completely. So we're going to start this again. So, like I said, Runner really wanted to go to space. This was his one mission in life, the one thing he wanted to do. And he was going to do it no matter what. Well, again, he'd never actually go himself, but he'd get the human race onto the moon. That was the one thing he would do. Well, by being a big part of the space race. Like I said, he was the head of NASA at one point. And that is a key part of this. So I mentioned how Operation Paperclip brought in all the greatest Nazi scientists. Well, they put in the work. And originally it was military reasons, but where it really kicks off is whenever the Soviets, with the help of one of his former colleagues, launched Sputnik into space, the first man-made satellite. And this is a great achievement for the entire human race, and for the Soviets. For them, definitely. The Americans weren't too happy about it. They didn't realize they were in a space race and they were behind schedule. The Soviets would then get the first animal into space with a dog, I believe. And they would also get the first person, Yuri, I believe his name was, into space. Which, like, that must have been terrifying. This is a big thing. So the Americans, they needed to catch up. And they had the perfect man for it. The one man who wanted to do it, who would do anything for it. And that's the interesting thing here. Anything. So he finally had his shot. And this is the key point. How does Disney tie in? Well, not only was the American government, like, they were really hoping for this, because this was a big PR thing. They had to help get the people on board. And Walt Disney's where this steps in, where they created films, educational films, edutainment, with Wernher von Braun, where he would be on, like, television discussing his rocket.
That's what she said!
Which, you know, I saw a meme once, like, you know, that It's Always Sunny meme of the two guys across the room staring at each other. And it was like, you know, Slave from his camp and him, like, catching each other's eye at Disney. I felt like it's a bit dark in taste, but yeah, I can see where this comes from. There's literal photographs of, there may not be photographs of him in his SS uniform, but there's photographs of him with Walt Disney. And I'm not making any weird implications about Disney being involved with Nazis. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it's not the best look for a company. Because they remind people that, hey, remember that Nazi we worked with at one point? And I know, as I've said, it's debatable how much he really cared about the Nazi ideology. He's not there to defend himself. And he still did work with them. What I'm saying is, it's just not the best look. And I spent a good chunk of the film going, the fuck? Isn't he like the Nazi that worked with Disney and now they've made a character based on him in a Disney film? Still, he gets beat up a wee bit and he gets killed, so that's always a plus, because again, like I've said, punching Nazis should be a national pastime for every country that has Nazis. Call me old-fashioned. My grandfather fought in the war against them. He got a lot of medals, which apparently I should have somewhere. Anyway. It was just I'm not making any implications. I'm just saying it was a weird choice. You think someone along the line would be like, hey, can we maybe not have this guy? Maybe in one of the original versions of the script, it was him. And they were like, yeah, you can't use that name. Make him someone else. We're going to look a bit weird here. There's a possible chance for it. I don't know, because we'll never know. He was a true genius as well. Again, I'm not going to deny that. Just he has a very interesting legacy. There's a good philosophical look there as well, but maybe if I was a better man, I'd discuss it. But Jesus, I'm not touching that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. I have a few things in the works that I'm trying to come up with and work on. And one's going to be talking about Brandon Sanderson's work. I have an idea for that. Another one is going to be about canon, but we'll see what else pops up between now and then, because these are things I really haven't even spent a lot of time thinking about. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, please comment what your thoughts. Was it weird for Disney to choose this guy, or am I just being a fucking oddball about this? It didn't change my enjoyment of the film. I really enjoyed it. But again, guys, thanks for sticking with me, and just stay awesome, okay?